Gentlemen, in this video I'm going to rank my 8 Dossier fragrances from worst to best in this Dossier Fragrances buying guide. Dossier is a fragrance brand that makes fragrances inspired by other luxurious, higher end, more expensive fragrances for those who want to spend as little as possible but still get great quality fragrances for that low price tag. And in this video I'm going to show you the 8 that I have that Dossier sent to me that I will rank from worst to best to tell you, gentlemen, which ones I prefer the most and which ones I can recommend the most as well. But let's not waste any more time and let's begin. On the 8th spot with immense improvement rating of a 7.5 out of 10 is going to be Dossier Ambery Sage. Dossier Ambery Sage is inspired by Tom Ford Fabulous, and in my opinion it's not really far away from that, but at the same time it is very much inspired by and not a direct dupe. In my opinion, Ambery Sage from Dossier leans a lot more licorice heavy and much more leather dominant in the base, where instead of the original you're going to pick up on some almond to give you some of this bitter almond nuttiness to contrast the leather and the aromatic sage that's also in here. And the sage is not really as prominent here, but to give you some contrast and some other nuances apart from the very dominant leather in the base. But apart from that, you're going to pick up on a lot of licorice and some touch of some cinnamon as well, which is going to be for those of you who really like something very spicy, very oriental, and something very ambery and leathery with a heavy dose of dark savory licorice, which can be off-putting for some, but in my opinion it's fairly well done. If you like what the combination of licorice, cinnamon, leather, and some aromatic spices sounds like, Ambery Sage might be something just for you. On my skin, Dossier Ambery Sage lasts over 12 hours with a projection of an arm's length for around half an hour, which then dries to a moderate and in the end a mild but noticeable skin scent that lasts for a very long time. I think this is a decent fragrance nonetheless, but for the sheer price that this goes for, I think it's an awesome fragrance, especially if you want something very licorice and leather dominant as the fragrance that you want to wear. That's why I've given Dossier Ambery Sage a 7.5 out of 10 minutes improvement rating. There are going to be a lot better ones in here, but still not a bad one at all. On the 7th spot I have Dossier Floral Rose. Dossier Floral Rose is inspired by Le Labo Rose 31, and in my opinion it's a fairly good inspired by here because it is very reminiscent of the original scent profile, but it's not really an exciting fragrance nonetheless. So if you're looking for a very accurate dupe of Le Labo Rose 31, this one is a really good one, but it's not really anything special in terms of a fragrance. This is going to be a very fresh, bright, slightly citrusy, but mostly very dewy, slightly aromatic rose fragrance. So if you want a rose fragrance that is very fresh, very uplifting, lively, and slightly vibrant, with some touches of some dewiness, some greenness, some slightly aromatic touches, but mostly very airy and light, this is a really good shout, especially for the price as well, because this is going to be very inoffensive, very clean, but also have this floral, slightly flower petal, watery, dewy sensation here. Very easy going, very easy to wear, with a musky, clean dry down. Overall, very well blended, very well put together, but nothing very exciting. On my skin, Dossier Floral Rose lasts 8 to 10 hours with moderate projection for around half an hour, which then dries to a mild skin scent. I've given Dossier Floral Rose a 7.6 out of 10 minutes improvement rating because I think it is slightly better in terms of quality and more refined than the previous fragrance, hence why of the slightly better rating. On the 6th spot with immense improvement rating of an 8 out of 10 I have Dossier Spicy Orchid. Dossier Spicy Orchid is inspired by Tom Ford Black Orchid, and in my opinion this is one of the more exciting ones from the Dossier catalog. This does the job very, very well, both in terms of performance but also the overall scent profile. You get this spicy, dark, mysterious, ambery orchid sensation that is known in the original, but in my opinion it dries slightly less dense and exciting as the original. But again, for the price, not only do you get a very accurate opening that is slightly detectable in quality but still very wearable and very unique, but I also think that the dry down could have been a little bit better. Whenever you start to wear the fragrance, you get the very complex nuances of the truffle, the orchid, and some spices and some amberiness as well, but the dry down fades to being slightly less dense, slightly less rich than the opening, and as if the quality starts to fade whenever it gets to dry. So even though this has been a pleasure to wear, you can detect that it's not as high quality as the original as it is to be expected with the price. But even though that's the case, I still prefer this one to the previously named fragrances. On my skin, Dossier Spicy Orchid lasts 10 to 12 hours with around an hour's of projection of around half an hour to an hour, which then dries to a moderate and in the end a mild skin scent. I've rated Dossier Spicy Orchid an 8 out of 10 men's improvement rating, and I think it is very well deserved, especially for the very affordable price that you're paying for such a complex scent profile. The quality is detectable, but again, you are paying much less than for the original, and the quality here is still very, very good. On the 5th spot, I have Dossier Fougere Oud. Dossier Fougere Oud is inspired by Tom Ford Oud wood, and in my opinion, it's one of the better inspired buys of the Tom Ford Oud wood DNA. This is going to be for the person who wants to wear Tom Ford Oud wood, but not only doesn't want to pay the price tag, but also who wants something slightly subdued, less strong, less complex, and linear in the scent profile. So as I mentioned, this is not going to be as strong as Tom Ford Oud wood, but it is going to be longer lasting. It's not going to be as spicy and as woody, but slightly fresher, less robust, less structured, and overall less complex and much more easygoing. So you are going to get that Tom Ford Oud wood DNA with the westernized oud accord, with some spices, some slight woodiness, but there is also going to be some of this very round freshness that is known for these westernized oud accords. So this is going to be very round, very well structured, but not as well structured or as well robust and rich and complex as the original. So even though the quality is detectable, I still think this is one of the better inspired buys of the original, and I also think it is a much more wearable version for people who want something more subtle but still have the oud wood scent profile. On my skin, Dossier Fougere Oud lasts 9 to 11 hours with a moderate projection for around half an hour, then dries to a mild skin scent. So even though this is going to be much more subdued in terms of the intensity of the scent profile, it is going to last much longer than modern Tom Ford Oud wood batches. I've given Dossier Fougere Oud an 8.2 out of 10 men's improvement rating. On the 4th spot with a men's improvement rating of an 8.3 out of 10, I have Dossier Powdery Tobacco. Dossier Powdery Tobacco is inspired by Tom Ford Tobacco Vanille, and in my opinion this is also a really good inspired buy, but it has a very obvious dupe quality. And what I mean by that is not in any particular way negative, but it is noticeable. As many of you might know, in Tobacco Vanille there is a dried fruit accord, but it's not really as noticeable. It's more of a very subtle thing that you really need to sniff a long time to really notice and pick up. But here, as I've tried with other inspired buys, the dried fruit accord is very noticeable to give you some tartness to the tobacco, which is going to give you a much more rich quality, and without it, it would just feel very flat and not really as structured. So here, the dried fruit accord is really noticeable to boost the scent profile and the intensity of tobacco, and the tobacco here is slightly powdery but much more in a dirty way, with the vanilla giving you some slight smoothness around the edges. But again, the blend here is not going to be anywhere near Tobacco Vanille, but I still think this this is a really awesome fragrance and alternative to that for the price. On my skin, Dossier Powdery Tobacco lasts 10 to 12 hours with a nice scent bubble for around 1 to 2 hours, which then dries to a noticeable but mild skin scent. I've given Dossier Powdery Tobacco an 8.3 out of 10. Even though the dried through the core and the blend is noticeable, it is still a really good fragrance and a super awesome alternative for people who don't want to pay the huge price tag of the original but still want something reminiscent, because the quality here is really good. On the third spot, and with immense improvement rating of an 8.4 out of 10, I have Dossier Musky Oakmoss. This fragrance is inspired by Creed Aventus, and this was my first Dossier fragrance, but this one is one of the better ones I've tried, because not only does it reminisce the scent profile of the original very well, but also lasts a long time and is very well refined for the price that you're paying. So this is going to be one of the more pineapple heavy and pineapple focused fragrances around the Creed Aventus DNA, because this is very fresh, very lively, very airy, with the pineapple giving you some of this slightly aromatic but mostly very juicy, fruity freshness and sweetness, which is really appealing and very well known for the scent DNA. But here you are not going to pick up as much of the birch, which is known in the Aventus DNA, but here it's going to be much more focused on the musky and oak mossy type of scent qualities, because this is very airy, very light, but at the same time it is very robust, long lasting, and has some density and richness to it. This is very easy going, very easy to wear, but at the same time one of the better alternatives I've tried to Creed Aventus, because it is so well blended, so well structured, and overall a pleasure to wear. Not very complex by any means, but still a really great alternative, because the price point doesn't really hinder the quality all that much, because it's not very woody. It is going to be much more simpler and for some an easier wear, but generally such a really good fragrance for the price. On my skin, Dossier Musky Oakmoss lasts 10 to 12 hours with moderate projection for around half an hour to an hour, which then dries to a mild skin scent. And again, I've given Dossier Musky Oakmoss an 8.4 out of 10. On the second spot, I have my favorite one with immense improvement rating of an 8.4 out of 10 as well. It is going to be Dossier Floral Marshmallow. Dossier Floral Marshmallow is inspired by Killian Love Don't Be Shy, and it is so darn close to the original fragrance. This is very accurate in terms of the scent profile. You get this very marshmallow-like white floral powdery sweet scent, which is to die for in my opinion, but the only differences that I pick up are in the intensity and robustness aspect, and the dry down is not going to be as strong and as complex as the original. But in terms of the opening and the progression and mid of the fragrance, it is so darn accurate. It is really mind-boggling. When I tried them side by side, both the Dossier fragrance and the original, I could almost not pick up on any differences other than the original being slightly richer and overall slightly stronger than this one. But this one smells very accurately to the original. Not 100%, but very close. This flows so nicely throughout the air, leaving you with this very nice scent bubble and sillage when you walk by, and it is my personal favorite from the Dossier catalog and the 8 Dossier fragrances that I own. On my skin, Dossier Floral Marshmallow lasts 10 to 12 hours with a nice scent bubble and moderate projection for around half an hour, which then dries to a moderate and in the end a mild skin scent. There's a reason I've given this fragrance an 8.4 out of 10 minutes improvement rating. I really like it. I really enjoy wearing it. I've given this fragrance a somewhat big dent, and there's a reason for it. I really enjoy it, and since I don't have the original fragrance, I really enjoy wearing this one, especially because how accurate this actually actually is to the original. And finally, on the number 1 spot, the one that I think is the best one overall, looking aside from my favorite one, is going to be Dossier Ambery Cherry. Dossier Ambery Cherry is inspired by Tom Ford Lost Cherry, and this does it so well. This fragrance is going to remind you a lot of the original. This is going to be very fruity, very succulent, jammy, super rich, dense and strong, but this fragrance is going to have a twist on it, with there also being some hints of some strawberry and some other red fruity sweetness in here, and the cherry accord being somewhat more sour and less jammy than in the original. So the original is going to be slightly more potent, stronger, and overall denser and thicker and more round around the edges, whereas this one is going to be slightly more fruitier, slightly more complex in the fruity aspect, with some more fruits being detectable other than the cherry. So even though this is going to be significantly cheaper, still an incredible fragrance that reminds you a lot of the original. On my skin, Dossier Ambery Cherry lasts 12 plus hours with around an arm's length of projection of around an hour, which then dries to a moderate scent with some slight detectable scent bubble qualities, and in the end a mild skin scent. This fragrance is so good, especially if you're looking for a fragrance that is inspired by Lost Cherry, but you want something even fruitier and something that possibly has some strawberry sweetness in there as well, combined with the cherry sweetness. But I've given Dossier Ambery Cherry an 8.5 out of 10 men's improvement rating. So good, super sexy, and overall a joy to wear. Gentlemen, that was my top 8 Dossier fragrances buying guide. What do you think of this video? Have you tried out Dossier fragrances before? Have you not tried them yet but looking forward to it? Have you heard about the brand before? And what fragrance inspired by are you looking to investigate a little bit more into from the Dossier brand? Let me know everything you're thinking about down in the comment section below. I would love to see what you have to say down there. Also, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe to the Men's Improvement YouTube channel for more videos about fragrances, grooming, style, fashion, skincare, fitness, watches, everything that will make you, gentlemen, the best possible versions of yourselves. The last few things I want to ask you, gentlemen, is to smile more because it's free, and I want you to watch these 2 videos right here. This one here below is going to my latest upload, whereas this one up here is going to be video that the YouTube algorithm thinks you will enjoy.